So now we're going to build a custom chart in Altair, and we're going to build out the isotype chart. There are a few prerequisites I have loaded up here. You can see got the paths we would need for rendering on an SVG, and also the emojis. We're going to dive in and build this chart by hand, and this should give us a good feel for how to use headers, axes, and the Altair API in depth. While you could copy anything out of the example gallery, when you go to make that change to it or try to get it to work with your data, that's when it gets complex. So we're going to go ahead and dive in, and this should give us a good feel for how to make these changes on our own. Okay, so I've got these loaded up. I'm going to go ahead and run these. So I've got these variables with the lookup and the path. There's going to be a couple different ways, and I'll run through each on how to build out the chart. So first, we're going to need Altair. So let's import Altair as ALT. And let's also import pandas as PD. So we're going to want pandas for the raw data, and the raw data here, right? I've actually got it in the clipboard, so I'm going to go pandas data frame of this raw data set here. Okay, so let's go ahead and store that as D. And if I don't have an extra parenthesis, that should work. D.head. Okay, so we've got the full data. It's not aggregated here, right? So we're going to actually rely on Altair to do the aggregation. So first, let's draw it out using the paths. First of the two options, we can either use the paths to draw the shapes on the chart, or we could use the emojis. So to get started, we'll scaffold our way there. We're going to get started with alt.chart of D, right? First, we have to choose the chord mark we're going to display. And here, right, we want to go and use the different paths. And so we saw already we could customize mark point using different shapes. So we'll go ahead and start with the mark point here. No other options than that, and that should give us something. We got a bunch of circles layered on top of each other to start. So let's go ahead and start to build out the isotype horizontal bar chart that we saw before. Okay, so first, right, if we look at our data, right, our first encoding is we're going to want to encode both the country and the animal type on the y-axis. So we could do y of animal, right, nominal. That's going to be a start for us, right? Here we go, right? And we wanted to do the country, so that's going to be a row. So we set the row as the country nominal, so that'll give us the two different charts here. We're looking at the US and Great Britain, so we can split those out. Okay, we've got them going. I don't think we're gonna actually use the isotype for the animals, so we don't need to label them. So we can actually go ahead and turn off that axis. So we give it axis as none. And it looks like, let's make sure we did this right. We've got country labeling the countries. This is cool. Yeah, we also don't need the axis here. So let's turn that off. And we turned it off for Y as well. So those moved over. Okay, cool. Row. And here, right, it's a row. So we're going to want to turn off the header. We've already run into some errors. Okay, so we don't want a header. So let's dive in and look at what the header is. Okay, so we can specify for each row what the header is, right? And that's going to be our row encoding field type header. So let's look here. We did row, alt.row, header none. It was unhappy with this. It said validating type. None is not of type object. So I think maybe we need an Altair header here, right? We got a header, and let's do, I think if we dive into the header property, we can go ahead and set let's go ahead and take a look at the sample here. We got a column, header, title font size, label font size, and we want to turn it off. So we can go ahead and set the title to be null on this. So let's set the title to be none, be null if you're in JavaScript. Okay, looking good. Okay, so now we want to actually encode the number on X. This is where it's not, our data is not in the right format. So we've got, here we've got our data, but it's not aggregated. It's not grouped. So we've got cattle, pigs, and sheep, and we've got many rows for each. We actually want to get the count. If we want to get the count, right, there's maybe a couple ways we could go about doing this, right? Another kind of two options in the path. We could do this in Altair, or we could go ahead and do this in Pandas. Let's try doing it in Altair. You know, we're trying to get handy in Altair. We could do a group by on D, right, and aggregate up to the count. Let's go ahead and first try to do this on Altair. So we're going to use the transform function. Again, the reference here, if we jump over to Altair, right, we're using a marked point, so I got that up. We can go to the transformation options. And I think we're going to want to do a window transformation here. So let's see, transform window is going to allow us to do this. And here's their example. And it looks like it's not loading. Well, anyway, this is what we're going to want to do. So we can go ahead and do the transform window. And let's see, so let's do transform window for us. And here, right, we're going to set X to be the rank. And we're going to set the group by columns. We're going to do this operation to be 2, right? So we've got the country that we faceted by, and we're also going to want to do the animal. Okay. Cool. So we did that transform window. This created an X for us, right? And that's what we're actually going to want to display on X here. So we can go and say X is X. Oop, I have to give it a type because this is not inferring it from pandas. Okay, cool. We've got it going here. And now let's do shape. This is the count. So it actually looks like the group by worked. So it's the shape. Let's give it a shape by animal. It'll guess the data type for us here. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Again, we're going to use the isotype, so we can probably go ahead and turn the legend off here. I think it's going to be option legend. Is it popping up there to autocomplete? Alt.shape legend. It is, yeah, it is in there. So we'll go ahead and set legend to be none. Okay, we didn't need the legend there. We can also go ahead and, again, set the axis to be none because it's not really going to be meaningful here the way we've done the aggregation, right? We're actually wanting to count. Oh, yep, and we didn't want to do that here. We want to set the axis to be none on X. So alt.x, axis none. And we're cruising along. Okay, we're getting close. It's kind of small, so let's go ahead and make it a little bit bigger, right? We can do that. We can set the properties. We can set the width. Let's go 400, height 400. Make it a little bit bigger here. Okay, that's pretty good. It did it on each chart, so we just go and squish them a little bit. Cool. All right, this is looking pretty good. We've got the shape, and now the core part of doing the isotype. Right, we did the shape, and that's going to pick from the circle, square, triangle. But now we want to go ahead and set that to be the different animals. So that's where it's going to come in that we had them defined. So there are two ways we define them here, with paths and with the emojis. So what we could do, you know, a few different paths to do either of these, a few different paths, code paths to do either of these. We could go ahead and stick the animal in the data frame here, and have the animal be aggregated on the data frame, right? But we could also go ahead and use Altair to go ahead and join that. So let's really try to extend our Altair foo here to do that. We could add, you know, either of these on the in Altair. So I'm actually going to want to create this as a string, so we can pass it to Altair. Cool. So emoji lookup, I think, is sticking as a string for us. So let's go ahead and give it a try. So we're going to want to do another transformation to join this. And in this case, we're going to want to do a transform calculate. So we can do any type of calculated field we want. And again, you can go over here to the docs and check out what we can do. Transform calculate. So here's where we can create a new data column. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to create this column using the, how should we do it? Should we do it using the lookup? Yeah, let's do it using the lookup here. So transform calculate. And we have our lookup as a string. So let's pass this over to Altair. Okay. And our string isn't quite right because if we want to do this lookup in Altair, it's going to be doing this in JavaScript, so it'll be executing it with the datum available before we'd imported datum from Altair. We don't need to do that here. We can go and do the emoji lookup string. So we do this string. We're going to want to pull this out of datum dot, I think it's going to be animal because we aggregated on this. Okay, and then we can just pass in transform lookup calculate emoji. So this string is going to be actually run as JavaScript. Cool. Calculate is a required property. Oh yeah. So we got to actually give this a name. Let's give this a name of emoji. Okay, cool. We didn't use it yet. Here we did X and here we did shape. So let's go ahead and I think that. Oh, so if we did shape, we would need a path. So if we did shape and we wanted a path, I think we'd want to do this as text. So these are actually text. So let's go ahead and switch over here and plot these all as text. We're still going to have Y, X, row. And then for the text, we can go ahead and set alt.text here on the emoji to be nominal. And we've got that emoji pulled in. So I think this should work. And it wasn't looking for a legend on text. So let's go. Oh, cool. And it worked. Cool. So we could go ahead too and set the size here on the global config. So there's a few different ways to go in and configure. We can configure on the encoding level. We can configure on the chart level. Here we're doing some top level configuration. We can go ahead and set this one on the whole mark type. So let's give it, size 20, a little bit better. Maybe we want to fill out the chart. And here we go. So that's one way. So here we did the lookup in JavaScript. So we did it in Vega Lite. And we use the text encoding because we use the emoji. So that's actually a text element on the SVG way underneath. We could also use a path element on the SVG, and that's what's going to be used by shape. So that one's slightly different, but what we need to do ultimately is get that path to be available here to do a shape. So if we're going to do a shape encoding, let's call it emoji. We want mark point here is going to give us the different options for shape. And X rank, country animal. This all looks okay. And let's go and give it, we did the emoji lookup here. But we're going to want to encode this as the path. So we're going to have to do a custom scale to do this. So let's see, emoji. We don't need to do the transform calculate anymore. Let's not look it up. Because just having, if we're in D3, right, we could just go and stick the path on the path attribute. But we're not. So we're not going to want to join it onto the data in Altair. We'll actually go and use a custom scale. So what we can do here, let's call this our shape scale. And we gotta give it alt.scale. We could define this on the fly too. And then I think the domain, right, I think is gonna be, it's gonna be a list. I think we want person, or we want, what are our data attributes here? We have cattle, pig, and sheep, right? We don't have any people. So let's do cattle. So this is to me, this is familiar. It's like doing it in ND3, right? You have a scale, you have to define the domain and the range, right? If you want to go and look at any of these, you can go into the scale here and see what we have to set, scale type. So here we're going to be using a not an order scale, a nominal scale here. And I think ordinal in D3 is going to get it for us. Yeah, so here's the ordinal one. And well, they didn't use it. Color, but it's a default for color and shape. Yeah, so we can pass it the range. Yeah, so we're gonna give it the range of output values and the domain of the input values. So if we go back here, right, we're gonna give it the domain of the input values. So it's gonna be inputting either cattle, pig, or sheep. And the output values, the range, is going to be those paths we had. So I think we had cattle path, pig path, and sheep path. So again, these are actually just strings at this point, right? These are just path strings, and these are SVG path specs. So if you want to look into the SVG path spec, not really important for our use here, right? But if you go into MDN SVG, and this gets down to some of the lower level stuff, we go to the SVG element reference. We're actually going to be using a path element under the hood here. And so we'd go to the path type. And this is what a path looks like. It's actually just a string set in the D attribute. That's what we're going to do with these strings. These tell it where to turn and such. Okay, so here we go. We're giving it that shape. The shape of the emoji. And then we're also going to give it a scale, right? So our scale is going to be our shape scale. And I think that's what we need to do. We'll have to think about the color too, but I think this should do it. This is going to take in the emoji. Oh, well, we don't have emoji, right? So that's actually animal. Okay, let's give this one a shot. I think it's right. Okay. Scale range, validating any of. Okay, it's not happy with our range. And we had cattle path, pig path, and sheep path. And I pass this in as a list. Domain and range. Cattle, pig, sheep. And I did scale is shape, scale alt dot shape. Did I do this right? Well, just like before when we did the basic shape, we don't need a legend. Let's skip on our shape scale and see how it works. We're okay. Oh, it's still unhappy with our scale. Let's take a look at this list. Okay, that's our list. Although it looked like those were coming out. Did these come out as strings? Ah, there's a comma there. Those are what are throwing us off here. Okay, because it looked like I was getting tuples here. See this comma? Okay, cool. So let's keep it going. And then you'll still have to validate the spec. And let's give it our shape scale. So shape. All right, let's give it a shot. Oh, no property named shape. And cool, it's working except for one of our lookups, cattle, pig, sheep. And we had cattle, pigs, sheep. So our domain is not wrong. Our domain is not right. That one doesn't exist. So we need pigs, cool. And I drew the path, right? So the path element, you know, we can go look at what the path element does, right? The attributes you can set, D, which draws it, and we can go ahead and set all the stuff like fill and color in that, and ultimately, right, we don't really care about the details, right? We care about the encoding channel, so Altair doesn't really force us to think about all of those details. So here, right, we can just go ahead and set the color to be, let's give it an alt.color. And here we're going to want to set it to be the animal. Let's give it a nominal animal color scale. Okay, so that did the color, but we want to go ahead and set the fill. So we can again specify this at the high level. So we can say this is going to be filled. Okay, cool. It looks like it's working, and we can change the size around, right? We can make it a little bit bigger if we want for these ones. They ran off the side a little bit, so that's not great. We'd have to give it a little bit of padding. So here x was O, right? We can go ahead and add to our x. Here we did it with the rank. Okay, so we got it working. Again, we can turn the legend off on the color if we want, because we don't need it. The next thing I want to show you is, so we did this by doing the group by on Vegalite underneath Altair. So the group by, Altair did the group by for us. But we could also do this in Pandas. So we could do group by on that, and then we just have to compute whatever our x attribute was. So here, right, x was the integer, and that gave us what we wanted. So we could do the same thing using Pandas. And it's a balance. Sometimes you can do things on Altair, and there's a lot of different getting familiar with Altair and learning all these different transforms that are possible really gets you all the options that Altair can do. Sometimes it's best to do it in here, but we could also do something like this. So let's take out D, and we could do group by. I think it's just one d.group by, and then we're going to group by these same things. So country and animal. It's going to behave the same way. So here we go. Yeah, we get a group by object, and then we can go on here. It's not helping me aggregate. And then let's say x. Let's do the min of. Sorry, I gotta get this right. X is going to be the min of, what do we want to do it on? We want to do the count, right? Oh gosh, I'm going to have to get this right in Pandas. Okay, this is definitely not right. I'm missing even a parenthesis. Okay. Oh shoot. You pass a dictionary of the aggregations you want to do. Yep. So, or tuples. Let's do it this way. I think we're going to do length. Well, either way, I'm going to stop short. You don't have to watch me debug the group by. But if you did the group by here, right, you could just go ahead and get rid of this one, right? And then you could just rely on the x attribute that you already have. So here, right, your data is going to have to look like country, animal, x with the count, right? So here you would just have 6 rows, right? For each country and animal, you'd have a single integer. Right, so you're going to aggregate on the length of each of those vectors. So that's how you do it, and maybe I'll come back and add that after I've debugged it. Yeah, so that's how to build a custom chart. You can really dive into each of these, each of the options that are available in these scales. So, diving through each of these are going to be the ways to do the customization. There's a lot of different types of transformations that you can do. So I would say that, on the whole, Altair is really powerful in all these that it makes available. And, doing these in Altair at least gives you a consistent way of doing it, other than manipulating the data in Pandas. You have both options, though. So both are going to work. Cool. Thanks for watching.
And now I just want to quickly run through what the solution looks like using Pandas to do that data aggregation. So I went ahead and did it here just to save you the time of me debugging, doing the Pandas group by. What it looks like, right, is you take the data frame, group by country animal. As expected, the size function will get you the counts, and that'll put it in a column named 0. So we'll take the size, we'll convert that back to a data frame, because what you get is the series, and then we'll rename that column of 0 to count. I guess we could do the rename on the series object as well. And then turns out that Altair is unhappy with the hierarchical index. It doesn't know what to do with it, so we can go ahead and flatten it. So we'll create a new column based off the index column of country, and we'll create a new column called animal based off the index column of animal, and then we'll just go and reset the index. So we'll set the index just to be the range of the length. And then we get something that looks like this, right? So it's a total count, right? And that's what we wanted to show in our histogram. So if we go and do it, right, we're going to use G, this group by object. Actually, it turns out that, well, it only plots the last one. Maybe you need an arrow or something here, right? Because if we think about now what was actually happening on this plot, right, it's obvious that, well, the shapes are being drawn for every instance of the animal. So when we did that group by, not only did we count it up, but we took the total count, or we took the rank within each. And if we went back and looked at our solution on Altair, right, that was using the rank function directly. So okay, that didn't work, but we can pretty easily go and compute the rank actually. So we can do that right on the, we can do that really easily right on the data frame. So we'll add a new column called count. We'll group by country animal and just take the rank. So that's easy enough to do. And then, we get a rank that looks like this, and we call it count. And then we can just do the same chart we did before with D. The only thing we need to change is count rather than X, and we don't need to do the aggregation in Altair. And this is the chart that we had before. So it looks like our icons are a little bit too big, but yeah, that's the idea. We can do the aggregation in either, and still rely on the marks and encodings through Altair. Cheers.